Elizabeth Engel, welcome to the podcast. Most people don't, but you do. And we're very lucky. We are the top 2% podcast in the world, and it's because of getting unique guests on like you. I want to read a little bit about Elizabeth before we get started, but she's joining from the DC area. We are almost local. She is the founder of Spark Consulting. She's had her company for about 12 years or so. And prior to that, phenomenal experience, director of marketing and sponsorships for National Association of Children's Hospitals and related, is it insurance?
Institutions. Yeah, and they popularly known as NACRI. They have changed their name since, because that is very long, to the Children's Hospitals Association.
Got it. And prior to that, doing some consulting with some amazing companies, working as a manager for not-for-profit consulting, vice president of marketing, master's degree, University of Virginia, undergraduate from Messiah University. Phenomenal experience. But one of the reasons, Elizabeth, we were at the Professionals for Association Revenue event a couple of weeks ago in Annapolis. And we had the pleasure of being able to hear you speak. My wife and I were just like, oh my gosh, we love her philosophy and we want to learn more about you. That is the purpose of the podcast. We're able to find unique individuals that we are gravitating toward because of their uniqueness and because you are doing what most people don't. Welcome to the podcast, Elizabeth. Proud to have you on.
Thank you so much, Bart. I appreciate being asked to be here.
What I think our listeners are most interested in, we always talk about like growing up and the influencers of what led you to the path that you are currently taking as an example. If you can just share a little bit about growing up, what that looked like. And did you always know that you wanted to be a business owner, a consultant, a marketing expert, an entrepreneur? Just share a little bit with us.
Answering the last question first, no. I had no idea that any of this was gonna happen. So I grew up in the Philadelphia area, suburbs of Philadelphia, pretty typical youth. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to do with my life in high school, as one does, unsurprisingly, I did not think I wish to be in the association industry and be an association executive. Because if you ask a 5-year-old what they want to be when they grow up, precisely 0% say, I would like to be an association executive when I grow up. No, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And so I went off to college and I studied political science, thinking of heading towards a law degree, as one often does in those sorts of situations. And I ended up taking some political theory classes, realized that was what I really loved. And that was what I went off to the University of Virginia to study. I was intending to be a professor of political theory. Okay. You may think to yourself, that is not a career anymore. You are correct. I was finishing up my master's degree and about to start my PhD coursework. And I picked my head up from the rigors of my graduate program and looked around and was like, what's the job market like here exactly? And even back, I guess this was going on almost 30 years ago, the job market was not great for someone who wanted to be a stand-up philosopher. And so I thought, okay, let me call it with the master's degree before I get in deeper on a degree that may or may not, and probably may not, result in the career I was anticipating, and think about what's next. So, writing my master's thesis, I was working part-time at the University of Virginia for the Papers of George Washington, the project there that is publishing all the historical papers of our first president. Okay. And I was like, this is great and everything, but Charlottesville's a lovely place to live, and we really enjoyed it and all that. And it's not that big, and there's a lot of people in Charlottesville with not terribly practical advanced degrees, like, say, in political theory. And so I was like, the chances of finding full-time employment here are not great. What's the nearest big city? DC, which we were already familiar with, because if you're going to come to the big city from Charlottesville and do big city type stuff, you end up coming to DC most of the time. And so I started looking around for jobs, and I was initially applying for both for-profit and nonprofit jobs. And I ended up interviewing at the American Political Science Association, and they hired me to run membership and technology for them. I had been doing tech work for the Papers of George Washington, so I had experience on that side. And they hired me for the membership position despite the fact that I'd never worked for an association. I'd never managed a team. But the executive director at the time said, having just been through graduate school, you understand and can empathize with what our members are going through as they seek to have careers, because of course the American Political Science Association scholarly society, it's not so much politicians as people who study politicians. And yeah, that was the beginning of my association career. Flash forward to, I was working for the Children's Hospitals Association and thinking about what might be next. And I, at the time, was looking to get my first position as an executive director or CEO for a small association. I'd been an acting for one of the associations that I'd worked for prior to this. So I'm out there starting to interview and talking to people and saying, look, I'm looking to move on from children's hospitals. And everybody was saying to me, so you're going to start your own consulting firm, right? And I was like, no, I'm looking for my first CEO position. And this is the kind of association I'm looking for. And so finally, after about 2 months of this, maybe a little bit longer than that, I had lunch with a friend of mine who's a recruiter. And when I said, hey, looking to move on from children's hospitals, she said, so you're going to start your own consulting business, right? And I said, you're like the 12th person who's asked me that. Could you tell me what you're seeing that I'm not
Yeah.
seeing?
Why?
Yeah,
Exactly. Why?
exactly.
Why? What they
And
tell you?
she laid out a bunch of different things that I needed to think about. And probably the biggest one that definitely relates to the whole most people don't concept is the person who is the change agent
Hmm.
tends to do better as a consultant than as staff. Her point was you might get a board who's really on board with the idea of let's create some large scale change here in this organization and tell each other the hard truths and all that kind of thing. And then in 2 years, they'll all be gone and you'll get fired.
Great
I was
point.
like, oh, okay. Those hard truths, things that most people don't do, can
Mhm.
be easier to hear from
A consultant.
somebody outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So why do you think, Elizabeth, and this is going to get into the heartbeat of who you are, why were you so with National Association of Children's Hospitals, you were the change agent, got it, you were ready to leave or you're ready to move on, and people saw that drive in you. Why do you think that quality or that trait of being identified as a change agent, how do you think that came about and why for you
Ooh,
personally?
oh, that's a good question.
Better get a couple good ones.
Yeah. So several years ago, how did it come about and why? I'm not entirely certain, but I know that it's there and I know that other people see it. So several years ago, I was able to participate in a really interesting workshop at a conference that was run by a guy named Joe Gerstant, who does a lot of work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion area. And one of his kind of things that he's known for is this whole idea of fly your freak flag, be authentic to yourself. And this workshop was all about that. And so we were doing some partner work and I was sitting with somebody that I knew well. Jamie and I were able to get pretty deep pretty quick.
Mhm.
And we were supposed to think about what is your gift? What is the thing that makes you unique in the world?
Yeah.
And is there any evidence of that? And the way he had framed the context, the thing that struck me is I was like, I'm able to tell people things that might be hard for them to hear or share, like something that might be considered like bad news. And Jamie kind of nodded along and he said, yeah. And the thing that's really unique about you is you can do that without making people angry.
Which is
You
massively important, and I saw a video recently, Elizabeth, and I'll have to dig it up and share it with you, but it was a retired CEO, and he said, "Out of all the things that you could learn as a leader or as a new leader would be how to handle difficult conversations."
yeah,
So someone saw that in you,
yeah.
that you could were you looking for bad news, quotes, unquotes? Were you looking for bad news? Are you a critical person, or do you see how things could get better?
I think it's more the latter. People ask for consultants when they've identified that something is not going the way that they would like it to, broadly speaking, right? There's something that's going on here that's not what we want, and we're not sure how to get out of this on our own. And one of the skills that you have to be able to do is to be able to say, look, I'm going to hold up a mirror and make you look at what the problem is
Mhm.
and stop denying that, or you're going to have to face the problem. You got to face the real problem. Because
Yeah.
the biggest thing I think consultants can do, or one of the biggest things we can do, is help you identify what's really going wrong
Mhm.
or what's really being missed so that we can then help you solve the correct problem. And that's really important, right? If you're going to try to fix something, you have to diagnose the root cause. Because
Hmm.
otherwise you're just addressing symptoms and you may never actually fix the problem.
Yeah, instead of putting band-aids on it, you're going to
Exactly.
try to find out, how did this happen? Why is it
Exactly.
happening? Is it culture? Is it process? Is it
Exactly.
procedure? Okay, so you're very good at that.
Yeah.
And I
So
want, yeah.
is it being critical? Yes, but not in the sense of like giving criticism, more in the sense of like critical thinking
Mm,
and being able to look at a situation and say, okay, what's really causing this situation to happen so that we can address whatever that root cause is.
terrific. And I think you did a phenomenal job of describing what a true consultant, what a great consultant should be able to do. Has it ever gotten you in trouble?
I've definitely had a handful of clients over the years who maybe didn't necessarily want to hear that. I'm thinking of one in particular at the moment, and I'm not going to share any details, but they had hired me to diagnose a problem where in their minds they had already diagnosed it.
Hmm.
And when I dug in on what was going on, I feel that their diagnosis was incorrect. And the diagnosis that they had come up with very much placed the blame for the problem on another party.
Hmm.
And certainly that party probably shared some of the blame for what was going on. But this particular organization did not want to claim any of the responsibility for the situation as it was for themselves. And they were absolutely contributing to the problem, definitely more than 50%. And yeah, sometimes, and then the thing with consulting is, and this is one of the downsides of it, is a lot of times, like you deliver, here's my diagnosis of what's going on, like the research project. Part of the project, this is what we learned. And then recommendations, right? This is what I think you should do about it. And there is the whole thing of you turn that over and what happens? And sometimes clients will will have you stay on to help with implementation, and then you've got a little bit more control over
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
actually happens with these recommendations. But in the end, if the clients, we don't like the recommendations, they can
Hmm.
ignore them. And I suspect that's what happened in this case.
Hmm. Yeah. So interesting. So you have the ability that other people saw in you, which I believe you now see in yourself, the ability to be able to independently look at a situation, dive into it, identify the problem, and then a very professional and respectful way communicate, this is what I've seen. Here are some ideas without offending anybody. Lovely. And I know that's your style, obviously came across when we heard you speak. I was listening to a couple other videos when you're doing some online training and online classes, and you are very confident, you are very direct, but you are not you are not biting, you are not caustic, you are not stinging, which I think is a great attribute, and no wonder your success with what you're doing. Elizabeth, go ahead, and then I have several more questions for
Well,
you.
one of the other things that kind of when we come to the end of these types of processes is my training is all to be a theoretician, right? So I'm good at analysis and all that kind of thing.
Mhm,
But I'm also a Gen Xer, so I'm very practical. At the end, it's always okay, we've learned all these interesting things from
mhm,
doing all this research and looking at all this data and talking to people and doing surveys and blah, 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 whatever.
mhm.
Now let's rubber meets the road, right? Concretely, what should you do about this? I never want anyone to walk away from an engagement with me, from a presentation that I give. One of the other things I do with the business is I do a series of white papers, from reading the white paper going, gee, that was really interesting. And I learned a lot. And now I have no idea what to do. I also very much want to leave people with, here are some very practical, do this, then
Yeah,
do this,
yes.
where you know where to go.
Yeah, and I'll give you somewhat of a similar example. I just had a doctor's appointment earlier this week, and it was just to get medicine refilled. But love the doctor, a great functional medicine doctor. And I'm pulling out a little piece of paper just to share with you. She wrote lovely things, right? I have 7 steps that I need to do, and um, they were not necessarily quite well explained yet. There's a lot of terms that I'm not familiar with. And she gave me, again, I really respect her. I appreciated the time that she spent with me. But she said, this is not going to be easy. It's not Mount Everest, but it's Kilimanjaro. And most
Okay.
people are not going to walk. Most people don't walk or hike Kilimanjaro. This is going to be a process. And I came home sad and frustrated because I just wanted to know, step one, what can I do now today? But I have to, right, I have to examine a low inflammation diet. I have to lower my toxic load. I have to help my body get rid of inflammation. I have to, something about seed oils. I don't know if I'm doing it right. So right, as a
Like, this is
consultant,
a
I was,
lot. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot. So I love that your thought process of you want to be very tactical and here's the research, but then prescriptive, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And if you would like further engagement, I can continue to help you along that process.
Mhm.
So thinking about, and this is a really somewhat of a high gain question, Elizabeth, knowing that you can examine that. So if we sat down for 30 minutes, you could dive into my business, right? Mainly keynote speaking, podcast, a breakout work, sales and service training. You could probably identify things that I could improve upon in my business. Are you able to do that with your own business? And
That
what's
it
the trick if you can?
Yeah, that is something that is it's really hard, right? It's the whole, like, the cobbler's child has no shoes, right? Right. And particularly, considering the fact that I do membership and marketing, which is all about relationships. And so, yes, multiple times over the 12 years that I've been running Spark, when I've had, as we all do, I have a kitchen cabinet of people that I go to
Mhm.
if I've got challenges and you need to talk things out. And multiple times over the years that I've run the business, they've come back to me and said, take your own medicine, right? Use the analysis
Mm.
that you bring to your clients and bring it to your own business. And that is an interesting process to try to step back and treat yourself
Mhm.
as the client. So, one thing that I've done really ever since launching the business is every year I do, even though it's just me, I do a business retreat.
Mhm.
And I'm an S Corp, so I do have one other member of my board of directors. It's my spouse. He actually takes his job extremely seriously. At the end of my business retreat, I do a board meeting, and I very much try to, again, bring that same level of analysis or that same type of analysis I bring to my
Yeah.
clients to looking
Yes.
at my own business every year, and
Yeah.
then reviewing that with him and looking for opportunities to improve.
Yeah. So hard to do. So hard to
It
do. And
totally is.
and
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. When we were hearing you speak, I'm writing notes. My wife, who helps me, Terry, who you met, helps me with the business. So we have a massive whiteboard off on my office. And every single morning we're sitting and we are going through things and we're trying to identify, okay, who has hired us before? Who could hire us again? Looking at timeline. Okay, who hired us December 11th last year for something in the future? And what does that, all of these different things, not an easy process to go through, but I think extremely helpful because we can help solve each other's situations and problems. I listened to a video of you, and I can't remember which one it was, Elizabeth, but it was brilliant. And I'm finding myself taking notes all over again. And you were talking about value for members in an association. I'm like, that's values and hiring me as a speaker. Okay, it all
Sure.
applies. But the funny thing is, when you're talking about taking your own medicine, we presented recently in Memphis. We were at the Peabody and I was speaking on kindness. And the funniest thing, I was not having a good day. I got a couple of little rejections. I was doing my best to embrace it, but I had to edit one of my speaking presentations. So there was 50 minutes that I had to go through and I had to edit. And the craziest thing happened, and this is not meant to be self-serving, but I listened to my presentation and I felt better. It was, and I found myself laughing at my own jokes and snickering and thinking that was creative. And oh, I liked what that meant. But I had to stop and listen to my own advice, get out of my own head in a unique way and listen to me. So I love that you do a retreat with you. Here's my
Mhm.
business retreat, your spouse, being a board member, and you are refocusing on things. What would you share are some of the things that you see from a client perspective that can be somewhat easy fixes? I know you're working with a lot of different associations. You
Oh,
work with corporations as well, correct?
no, I'm exclusively with
Okay.
associations. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
Let me back up and ask, what are some common problems that you are being asked to help with? Because I want our listeners, again, this is going to go out to, right, hundreds of thousands of people. And I want our listeners to be able to, one, we're learning about you as a person. Great. We like you. how could I perhaps use you or help you in the future? So can you share just a couple little
Sure.
examples, perhaps?
Sure. For folks who are listening to this who are like, what is an association? I probably should have covered this earlier. Associations
Oh.
are a category of nonprofits. They are generally organized around a profession or an industry, and they exist to serve that profession or industry. Many people focus on, oh, associations lobby for whatever. And that is the case for some associations. Not all
Mhm.
associations do much in the way of lobbying, but if you think of any profession or industry that you can think of, there is a professional society or a trade group for that profession or industry. That's the world that I'm in. The common things that associations deal with are not necessarily all that different than what for-profit businesses deal with. It's just like one of our the sayings that we all talk about all the time is, and you would have heard this at the Professionals for Association Revenue conference, is
Mhm.
no money, no mission. So we
Mm.
don't nonprofit doesn't mean no profit. It mostly means tax exempt. So we don't return profits to an owner or to shareholders, but you have to have revenue in order. We're mission driven organizations. You have to have revenue in order to fulfill the mission of the organization.
Yeah.
Common things that associations deal with are, as you might suspect, finding prospects to be members, which would be customers for a business, right?
Mhm.
Nurturing them into becoming members. Once they have become members, serving their needs, helping them achieve their goals, helping them solve their problems, particularly as relates to whatever profession or industry the association is organized around,
Mhm.
keeping those relationships loyal, getting them to renew each year. If they lapse, reinstating them. So that whole sort of membership life cycle thing. Then a lot of associations also do a lot of education and professional development
Mhm.
with regards to whatever profession or industry they serve. So there's delivering those types of programs in a way that's going to meet the needs of the all pieces of the industry, the employees, the employers, the people who are doing the training to help people get into that industry, and making sure that's all done in a way that meets everyone's needs and also keeps people's skills up to date with whatever the profession or industry is. And then there's all the sort of we're getting some of our revenue from dues, we're getting some from non-dues, we've got to keep that balance correct, and all the things that go with running an association as a small to medium sized business. Now, some of the main things that I see going on in my particular area, which is membership, right now, are a lot of associations held the line on making any changes to their membership dues and what those dues get you
Mhm.
pretty much starting 2020 to now. And so a lot of associations are re-looking at, okay, what are we charging and what are we offering for that? For instance, a lot of associations didn't raise their dues at all starting
Mhm.
in 2020. You may have noticed that
Mhm.
prices have gone up since then. And yeah,
In
so a
general,
lot
you
of
mean? In general,
exactly.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. So
exactly, exactly.
if membership dues have not gone up, then you have less money to continue your mission.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of associations are looking at those kinds of things right now. And this is relevant to the thing that you heard me presenting about. One of the other things that I do is I provide consulting for associations around evaluating ideas
Mm.
for non-dues revenue, all that stuff that's not membership dues,
Yes.
using lean startup methodology. So yeah, that's
Mhm.
another thing that I definitely see going on as a trend right now. There are known quantities in ways that you can raise funds aside from dues. You have a conference, you get sponsors for that conference, right? Those
Yeah,
are you
yes.
sell
You
ads
bring
in
in
your
great
program. Sure.
speakers.
Yeah, yeah. Those are all known, exactly. You bring in great speakers. Those are all known quantities. But if you're looking to do other types of things that are a little bit more blue ocean,
Mhm.
you might need help evaluating, is this or is this not a good idea? That's what
Mhm.
lean startup methodology can do.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. Yeah, and just thinking about it, and thank you for going to the foundation of associations. You're right. A lot of people, if you're not in the association world, even if you're a member of an association, you might not understand that it is about money, and you need to think about all of those different components. Uh, And then, what type of value am I receiving if I'm a member?
Hmm.
Do I like it? Am I contributing? Do I want to renew? What else am I getting for it? And is it meeting my business needs? And so often, Elizabeth, I was just thinking about this the other day. so often, and think about professional for association revenue, there were individuals there that were buyers, and then there were people that were sellers. Anytime you are connecting the two, most likely you're going to want to have people that are there. If associations are there and I sell association software, I'm going to want to pay to be there. Then it also deals with varying forms of sponsorship. Are there any things that you see that are maybe ocean blue or blue ocean, out of the box thinking of non-traditional ways of being able to get more funds for an association?
Yes, a particular project that I just finished up, and this one I can talk about because we wrote an article about it that we published in an association publication. So it's the American Association of Veterinary State Boards. They're the nice people who make sure that the veterinarian and veterinary technicians who take care of your pets are licensed appropriately. And so this organization, obviously their main customer, their member, is the state licensing boards, but there are lots of other people involved in licensure.
Mm.
There's the technicians and the veterinarians, there's the schools, there's the employers, because much like with human medicine, veterinary medicine is undergoing a sea change right now where
Mhm.
it is less common that a doctor or a veterinarian is going to own their own small practice, and more common, or becoming more common, that they will be an employee of a large health system. Again, whether it's veterinary medicine or human medicine.
Mm.
And so that's changed the environment in which licensure happens. They got looking at, okay, obviously there's the state licensing boards and that's our core group, but there are all these other players in this industry. Are there services that we could provide for the veterinarians, for the veterinary technicians, and or for those health system employers
Mm.
to help smooth the licensing process? So yeah, I mean, there's ideas like that. You know, that's just one example, but yeah, there are definitely ideas out there that are not ads
Yes.
and sponsorship and exhibiting and the traditional things.
Yeah. And I was at a show rather recently, and there was a gentleman that it was easy for this gentleman to get around on a scooter, on a mobile. I'm just trying to think of the right term. So, like a wheelchair, but a sitting wheelchair. Is it
Yeah,
called a scooter?
a,
And-
a mobility device. Yeah.
yes, yes, a mobility device. And the coolest thing was, again, this was easier for he was an executive with the organization. It was just easier for him to get around the trade show floor using this device. And someone came up with the idea of sponsoring it. And sure enough, on the back, it's sponsored by XYZ organization. And it was like they smiled about it because it was important that this gentleman had this device, and very creative. And boy, did it get a lot of attention. So there you have an executive with the association riding around on this mobile device, and it is being sponsored. Ah,
Yeah, this might be a little bit inside baseball for folks, but
yeah.
when I was at children's hospitals, when you have corporate supporters of your association, it is
Mhm.
often the case that they are presented with a limited package of what they can. And
Mhm.
one of the things most associations tend to include in that package is exhibit space at your trade show. And we were very typical in that. And we had our largest scale corporate partners. And when I took the job, one of the first things that I did is go fly to my largest scale corporate partners locations
Okay.
and have meetings with them in their home to ask about how things were going, what they wanted, was what we were offering them working for them, what were their goals in our space, etc. And a number of our corporate partners said, you're forcing me to take a 20 by 20 booth that I don't actually want. So if you're an architectural firm, you're like, great, we love the booth. We got all this cool stuff that we can show people that's like a physical thing that you can touch and look at and see. And if you're a marketing firm, you're like, what am I going to do with a 20 by 20 booth? This is
Right.
not, I can't fill this with stuff. I don't have stuff. And one of the things that we did pretty much right away is said, okay, so you don't want the booth. What do you want?
Mm.
And with that, we were able to get sponsorship dollars for other types of things. And the other thing is, and again, this is definitely inside baseball, there's a ratio of how many attendees to how many booths. And when we had some of our big partners not taking booths, those were booths we could sell to other firms who just wanted to be exhibitors. Through that, we had new exhibitors, more money from exhibiting, happier
Mhm.
partners, partnership money going to new stuff that we were trying to do. It ended up, everybody ended up happy out of this.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. And the simple thing, and for our listeners, the takeaway is if you're in sales, or we all are in sales, or we're trying to convince, simply ask the people, right? What else do you need? What could I provide for you? What do you see value in? I'm a member of an association, hospitality related, and I just got an email the other day, and it was very simply, what can we start, stop, and continue? And I thought, not many people are actually asking that. And I love, Elizabeth, that's what you are doing as an organization with Spark Consulting. People
Ask,
may be asking the questions.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
ask people what their goals are.
Yeah,
Ask people what the challenges are that they have trouble resolving.
yeah, yeah. And it
Look
sounds,
for answers to those
yeah,
two things.
yeah. And so it sounds so simple, but I love what you're doing, Elizabeth. I love how you were able to explain things. You were not solving any problems in this conversation, but you were offering different solutions. Your approach is phenomenal. I just want to read a little bit more about you. I want to make sure that our listeners have the references to where to reach you. And then also, thank you again. So, Elizabeth Engel, Spark Consulting, she's had this business for about 12 years. She is also the chief strategist. So, she has 25 years of experience in association management. She helps with membership, marketing, communication, fundraising, technology planning, internet strategy, social media, and so many other things. Solely working with associations. If you have a need, if you believe that someone can do a great job of looking at a problem and then helping you all solve it, I would highly recommend reaching out to Elizabeth Engel. Her last name is spelled Engel, Spark Consulting. She is very popular on LinkedIn. Let me say that. And what website, Elizabeth, can people go to?
It's getmespark.com.
Getmespark.com.
Get me spark. Like, you have a problem? Get me spark.
Yeah, get me spark. Get me out of here. Get me going. Ignite me. Elizabeth, last question that I have for you, and thank you again for being a guest on our show. Uh, if you could fill in the blank, most people don't blank. What would you say?
Most people don't push to ask the tough questions.
Absolutely right. And we have seen tremendous benefits when we push to ask the right questions and deliver the response. Phenomenal discussion, Elizabeth. So proud to know you. Thank you so much for being our guest. And
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So much fun. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you at some future events. And if we can partner in any way, we'd love to do so.
I certainly hope so, Bart. Thank you, Bart. I am so glad that you and Terry introduced yourselves at Rev Up.
Yeah.
Particularly since we're relatively local to each other.
No, amazing. So we will talk soon, but I cannot thank you enough. You are amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much.